So, I want you to picture this. It's 1959.
Right.
We are at the absolute boiling point of the Cold War. You've got the United States and the Soviet Union, two global superpowers, nuclear weapons literally pointed at each other.
Tensions are maxed out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly, they just stopped fighting over global territory to sign a treaty about a supposedly barren wasteland.
Yeah, they completely locked down Antarctica.
Right. No military testing, no resource extraction, and absolutely no unauthorized civilian travel. Which really begs the question, what terrifying shared discovery under the ice forced the world's greatest enemies to instantly become allies and just, quarantine an entire continent? Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's honestly arguably one of the greatest geopolitical anomalies of the 20th century.
Oh, without a doubt.
And today we're really digging into a comprehensive source dossier. It's titled The Frozen Empire, Antarctic Anomalies and the Ice Wall Cover-Up.
Catchy title.
Very. And it's this massive collection of leaked documents, civilian satellite imagery, whistleblower testimony, and it basically posits that Antarctica is not simply a frozen desert.
Far from it, according to these sources.
Right. The dossier argues it's actually the site of a highly advanced pre-cataclysmic civilization, what some independent researchers refer to as Tartaria.
Yeah, and just to give you some context, if you're familiar with alternative historical timelines, Tartaria represents this hypothesized global empire.
Right, heavily industrialized.
Yeah, technologically advanced, but supposedly completely erased from modern historical records. And the dossier we are looking at today claims that the absolute epicenter of that lost empire is currently buried beneath, 2 miles of Antarctic ice.
Which is a massive claim, and our objective here is to just impartially examine the mechanics behind these claims,
Look at the data.
Exactly. We're analyzing 3 primary pillars from the dossier.
Right.
So we've got the visual anomalies emerging from the ice, the historical military actions that established the quarantine.
Treaties and all that.
Yeah. Right. And then the third pillar is the leaked 2026 data from modern deep ice drilling projects.
Because whether you view this as literal truth or just, a fascinating piece of modern mythology, the dossier really forces us to evaluate the fragility of orthodox human history.
It absolutely does.
But if independent researchers are right, and we are talking about a literal frozen megacity, that raises a massive logistical flag for me.
Sure.
We have to start with the physical landscape, right? Because according to the recent civilian satellite imagery in the dossier, the ice in the Ellsworth Mountains region is receding.
It's melting, yeah.
And it's exposing these geometric structures that really seem to defy natural geological formation. The most prominent example people are talking about is the Antarctic Pyramid.
Right. The visual data on that is wild. It shows this massive structure with 4 highly symmetrical faces converging at a singular peak.
It looks exactly like a pyramid.
It really does. And to give you a sense of scale here, the base footprint rivals the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, wow. But I did read the mainstream geological counterarguments in the dossier too, and orthodox science just dismisses these entirely. They call them nunataks.
Yeah, the nunatak theory.
Which geologists claim these are just natural mountain peaks, protruding through the ice sheet, shaped by millions of years of freeze-thaw erosion.
Right.
But looking at the specific geometry, I have a hard time buying that mechanism.
Well, to be fair to the geological consensus, the freeze-thaw mechanism is incredibly powerful.
Sure.
What happens is water seeps into these tiny microfissures in the rock during warmer periods, and when it freezes, the water expands by about 9%.
Oh, so it acts like a wedge.
Exactly like a wedge. Over
Yeah.
immense periods of time, this literally shatters the rock, supposedly chiseling a mountain into these really sharp, jagged peaks.
Okay, I understand the physics of frost weathering, obviously, but freeze-thaw erosion creates chaotic scree slopes. It creates jagged, irregular facets.
It's messy.
Yeah, it does not create perfectly smooth, planar faces that just happen to align with mathematical precision. Think about it. If you found a perfectly symmetrical, four-sided structure on a beach, you wouldn't assume the wind and the tide just erosion carved it that way.
Oh, of course not.
You would immediately recognize intentional design. So how do the independent researchers in the dossier mathematically distinguish these specific formations from, standard natural nunataks?
So it basically comes down to the statistical probability of pattern recognition.
Oh.
The independent researchers argue that the specific angles of the Antarctic pyramid, so, 4 uniform faces, distinct right-angled base corners, They argue that's statistically improbable for random frost shattering.
Because nature doesn't build in straight lines.
Exactly. Nature favors the chaotic breakdown of materials, not the generation of perfect symmetry on a megalithic scale. So the researchers propose these are not isolated mountain peaks at all, but they're actually the uppermost spires of a vast submerged crystalline city.
Okay, wait. A crystalline city surviving under miles of crushing, constantly moving glacial ice.
I know it sounds.
Because the sheer weight alone would pulverize ancient infrastructure, right? Glaciers act like giant bulldozers. They grind solid bedrock into powder.
They do.
So how does the dossier account for the structural integrity of these buildings?
That is a critical point, and the dossier suggests two main factors. First, the materials hypothesized aren't standard masonry. We're talking about advanced crystalline and metallic polymers designed by a highly advanced civilization.
So they're built to withstand it.
Potentially. But second, and honestly more importantly, is the environmental mechanism of their burial. The claim here is that this wasn't a slow-moving gradual ice age.
Okay.
It was a catastrophic flash freeze caused by a sudden pole shift.
A sudden pole shift. Explain the physics of how that worked, because typically we think of continental drift as something happening over millions and millions of years.
Right, but the dossier leans on the theory of rapid lithospheric displacement.
Lithospheric displacement, okay.
Yeah. Imagine the Earth's crust as the loose skin of an orange, kind of detached from the fruit inside.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The theory posits that the entire crust shifted in a matter of days or weeks. So a landmass that was sitting in a perfectly temperate zone was suddenly yanked into the polar region.
Oh, wow.
The climate change would be basically instantaneous. The atmosphere would plunge to sub-zero temperatures so rapidly that it would freeze flora, fauna, and cities exactly where they stood.
Like a snapshot.
Exactly. It would freeze them solid before the slow, grinding glacial flow could even build up and crush them.
See, that paints a terrifying picture. Just an instantaneous event that traps a technologically advanced empire in time, perfectly preserved in a deep freeze.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a structure the size of a megacity wouldn't just sit there unnoticed for all of modern history. Geopolitical superpowers with advanced surveillance would have detected it decades ago.
They absolutely would.
So, did anyone actually go looking for it?
They did. And the timeline of that exploration aligns perfectly with the second pillar of our dossier, which is the historical precedent.
Military operations.
Exactly. Right after World War II, the United States launched Operation Highjump, led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Now, you probably already know about Operation Highjump if you follow Antarctic history at all, but what the dossier really highlights is the sheer, overwhelming scale of the operation.
Yeah, it's massive.
This wasn't some scientific expedition with a few sled dogs and a couple geologists. This was Naval Task Force 68.
Yeah.
We are talking over 4,000 military personnel, 13 ships, including an aircraft carrier, and multiple aircraft, all deployed in 1946.
It's unheard of.
Why send a heavily armed carrier strike group to the most inhospitable place on Earth right after the most exhausting global conflict in human history?
Well, the official narrative cites training for polar combat and mapping the continent.
Right, the official story.
But the whistleblower testimonies compiled in the dossier suggest a totally different motive. They allege that during the extensive aerial reconnaissance, Admiral Byrd's squadrons encountered advanced flying craft.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and they visually confirmed a hidden anomalous oasis beyond the ice. Basically an area entirely free of snow.
Which shouldn't exist there.
Exactly. The dossier suggests it was potentially warmed by geothermal vents or maybe residual ancient technology.
And what's crazy is that immediately after Byrd returns from this massive military deployment, the geopolitical posture toward Antarctica completely flips.
It does a 180.
Yeah, we go from sending aircraft carriers down there to establishing the 1959 Antarctic Treaty.
Exactly. And the 1959 treaty completely demilitarized the zone, suspended all sovereign territorial claims, and basically banned unauthorized exploration.
Nobody goes in.
Right. But the dossier flags the enforcement mechanism as the true anomaly here, specifically Article 7 of the treaty.
Oh, right. Article 7. That's the one that allows for unannounced aerial inspections by military superpowers of any installation on the continent.
Yes.
It's framed to the public as an Environmental Protection Act. But when you look at the mechanics, it functions as a mutual surveillance pact.
That's a great way to put it.
Because it ensures that no single country is covertly digging up whatever is buried down there.
You really have to view it through the lens of Cold War game theory. Historically, When global powers find a massive, unexploited landmass, they do not universally agree to turn it into a pristine, untouchable nature reserve.
No, they carve it up.
Right, they exploit the resources. The only logical reason the United States and the Soviet Union would mutually agree to a strict quarantine is if the strategic risk of conflict over what they found far outweighed the benefit of claiming it.
It's the ultimate standoff.
Exactly.
The logic being that whatever technology or evidence is down there is so paradigm shifting that world governments just decided it was safer to seal the vault entirely rather than risk a nuclear arms race to recover it.
Yeah.
But, military blockades from 1959 only go so far. If you want to maintain a cover-up in the modern era, you cannot just guard the coastline with boats.
No, technology has advanced too much.
You have to control modern technological surveillance because satellites and deep ice radar, they don't care about a treaty from the 50s.
They do not. Which brings us right to the present day, and honestly the most compelling evidence in the dossier, the 2026 data leaks from deep ice drilling.
This is where it gets crazy.
To maintain secrecy today, you have to control the data stream from the scientific community. The dossier heavily scrutinizes publicly acknowledged deep ice drilling projects that are currently underway, like the Sways to Sea project.
Right, and on the surface, Sways to Sea is just a climate research initiative.
Officially, yes.
They drill miles down into the ice shelf to extract sediment cores, ostensibly to study, historical weather patterns and glacial melt rates, which provides the perfect civilian cover for heavy logistical operations.
It really does. But the anomaly here centers on a leak of classified synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, scans from these exact drilling operations.
Okay, SAR scans.
And to understand the gravity of this leak, we really need to understand how SAR actually functions in a glacial environment.
Okay, how does it work?
Well, synthetic aperture radar doesn't just take a surface photograph. It sends microwave pulses that penetrate dry ice perfectly.
Like an X-ray.
Kind of, yeah. And I was looking at those leaked SAR scans from the dossier. Mainstream glaciologists claim they just found anomalous, jagged bedrock underneath the Ross Ice Shelf.
Right.
But the raw data shows the radar bouncing off what look like geometric grids.
Yeah, I saw those images. But how do we know that isn't just a processing artifact, like a glitch in the radar equipment?
Well, we can rule out equipment artifacts by looking at how the microwave pulses behave when they hit a dielectric boundary.
A dielectric boundary.
Yeah, that's just the point where the ice meets solid matter. When SAR pulses hit natural bedrock, the chaotic, jagged surface of the rock causes what's called diffuse scattering. Okay.
The radar signal basically bounces back in a really disorganized, messy pattern.
Because nature is uneven and rough.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But the leaked 2026 scans showed a highly organized return signal. The radar waves hit parallel lines and distinct right angles, producing what is known as specular reflection.
Specular reflection.
Yes, and radar physics dictates that you only get that kind of uniform concentrated return signal when the waves are bouncing off refined, structured materials.
Like what?
Like metallic alloys or synthetic crystalline grids.
So the radar is literally outlining the architecture of a buried metropolis.
That's what the data suggests.
But the dossier goes even further than just radar returns. It outlines leaked acoustic data too. They talk about seismic echoes.
Yeah.
So how does the seismic data correlate with the radar grids?
Well, when drilling teams map the bedrock, they often use seismic charges. They detonate a small explosive at the surface and measure how the shock waves travel downward.
Okay.
Think of it like tapping a spoon against a watermelon. If the watermelon is solid, you get a dull, flat thud.
If it is hollow inside, you get a resonant ring.
Because the acoustic waves are bouncing around inside the empty space.
Exactly. The seismic waves sent down through the Ross Ice Shelf are not returning the dull thud of solid, continuous bedrock.
Oh, wow.
The shear waves and Rayleigh waves are ringing back, suggesting the presence of massive, hollow subterranean cavities.
Just massive open spaces under the ice.
Right. And according to the whistleblower data, the temperature gradients within these cavities suggest they contain stable, climate-controlled atmospheric environments.
I mean, let that sink in for a second. Climate-controlled environments inside hollow cavities under miles of ice.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
If that data is accurate, it fundamentally changes what these drilling operations are doing. We aren't looking at climate scientists taking ice cores.
No.
We are looking at a covert excavation. It's a silent gold rush. World governments are using climate research as a front to covertly mine old world technology right under our noses.
That is the ultimate conclusion drawn by the dossier, and honestly, it is corroborated by the financial data.
The black budget stuff.
Exactly. The documents track a massive influx of black budget funding directed to specific Antarctic outposts over the last 3 years.
And for anyone who doesn't know, black budget money is unacknowledged, completely classified funding used strictly for covert operations.
Yes, it bypasses congressional oversight entirely.
Because you don't spend billions of untraceable dollars just to measure how fast the glacier is melting.
No, you don't.
The logistics required to maintain a covert excavation site in that environment. I mean, you need specialized thermal drills, classified transport flights, the hazard pay for the operatives. It requires the GDP of a small nation.
It really does. And if we connect the financial data to the historical lockdown and the modern radar anomalies, a very clear causal through line of secrecy emerges here.
Oh, absolutely.
First, you quarantine the physical perimeter with the treaty in 1959. Then you control the airspace and the civilian satellite data. And now you systematically excavate the site under the airtight guise of international climate science.
It's a perfect cover. But the motive is what really fascinates me. Let's talk about the specific technology the dossier claims they're trying to recover.
Okay.
Because it mentions that this Tartarian civilization harnessed free energy.
Yes, it does.
What specific mechanism of energy are we talking about here? Because that completely changes the stakes of this whole thing.
The dossier suggests the recovered technology utilizes zero-point energy, or basically global electromagnetic grid tapping.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
Well, instead of burning finite resources like coal or oil to create combustion, this ancient infrastructure supposedly pulled limitless ambient energy directly from the Earth's electromagnetic field.
Oh, man. If a modern government, or, a shadow coalition, successfully reverse engineers a zero-point energy generator, it immediately obsoletes the entire global power grid.
Instantly.
The petrodollar collapses. The nations that control oil reserves lose all their geopolitical leverage overnight.
Which perfectly explains the necessity for absolute secrecy.
Yeah.
The quarantine of Antarctica wouldn't just be about hiding an uncomfortable historical truth. It would be about maintaining modern economic monopolies.
Exactly. Whoever controls the extraction of old world technology controls the future power dynamic of the entire planet.
Precisely.
When you step back and view all the evidence objectively, I mean, the statistical impossibility of the geometric noon attacks, the mutual surveillance pact of the Cold War Treaty, the specular reflection in the SAR radar, and these massive black budget excavations, the entire continent is reframed.
It really is.
Antarctica isn't the bottom of the world. It is the ultimate vault of human history. The ice wall is not just a physical barrier. It is a cognitive barrier, engineered to keep us separated from our true technological heritage.
It is a profound paradigm shift. But there's one final, deeply unsettling implication we really have to extract from the dossier.
Okay, what's that?
The text establishes that this pre-cataclysmic civilization was highly advanced. They harnessed limitless zero-point energy, they engineered megalithic crystalline structures, and they basically mastered their environment.
Right. They had immense power and technological superiority.
Exactly. Yet, despite all of that advancement, they were still completely powerless to stop the cataclysm.
Oh.
They were instantly wiped out, flash frozen, and buried under 2 miles of ice.
That is.
So I want you to consider this. We look at our modern world with a profound sense of hubris. We assume our cities, our digital infrastructure, our global supremacy, we assume it's permanent.
Of course we do.
But if an empire, potentially far more advanced than ours, could be instantly erased and reduced to just a myth hidden beneath the ice, what does that mean for the permanence of our own civilization today?
Wow. That is the exact reality check this dossier provides. It forces us to realize how fragile our timeline really is and how easily a blank canvas can hide a shattered empire. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I want you to keep questioning the narratives you are handed, keep analyzing the data beneath the surface, and we will see you next time.